Ho, ho, ho. Welcome back to another episode of the Boys in Motion podcast. We're your hosts, Brian, Andrew, and Tyler, here to unwrap the best tips and strategies for endurance sports. This is episode 28, and it's a very important episode. Today, we're diving into something extra special for the holiday season. Our very first community Q&A. We asked you to send in your burning questions, and today we're reacting to them live and sharing our thoughts. Super excited to dive in.
Frig, I'm so excited. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And what better way to celebrate than with a big ol' endurance chat? We're here to answer your questions and react to your hard-hitting, burning questions and some hilarious questions from our Boys in Motion crew, with a few debates along the way. Let's get into this.
All right, so here is how this episode is going to roll. As usual, we'll do a quick BIM newsflash right at the top of the episode, and then we're going to dive right into the questions, everything from training motivation and funny happenings. And for this week, we're going to be talking about our episode next week, something that Brian has cooked up, a little something special. So Brian, tell us about that episode that we're going to be dropping right before the new year.
Yeah, last day of the year, I was chefing up a great episode idea, and let me tell you, we got quite the concoction. So tune in next week to the Boys in Motion podcast because we are doing the first ever, hopefully annual, BIM award show. So we're going to be celebrating the best moments in endurance sports from this year from the BIM community, handing out some very prestigious Boys in Motions awards, and really just sharing some of our favorite highlights and shouting out to some of the great community members that have made this year special. It drops, like I said, on December 31st at roughly 11 a.m. And yeah, don't miss it. It's going to be hot, and we're going to actually do maybe a few posts leading up to it so that you're in the loop.
Fresh off the press, that's going to be real funky. Nice, funky episode. And I'm fired up to get into this episode.
So without further ado, let's go to our first question. This is somebody who's really tightly knit into the Boys in Motion. It's our biker man, Marc. So let's hear what he has to say.
Hey, BIM boys. I have a few questions for you for your upcoming podcast here. The first one is to Andrew more specifically, and I'm wondering if you have a final running goal in mind that you're working towards. Is it a marathon time? Do you want to become pro? What is the end goal, or is there one? The next one is more directed to all of you, and it's simply, what is your why? Why do you put yourselves through the training and the pain that is endurance sports? Look forward to hearing the answers.
I love it. Great questions from Mark. And I guess since the first one was targeted at me, I can kick it off of the final running goal. I think I have to give a shout out to Ross on the final running goal with his run streak. I don't really have necessarily a final running goal. I want to just be running as long as I possibly can and hopefully be doing it as quickly as I can. But the big goal that I have is the 6 marathon majors, doing all of those, and hopefully all pretty speedy. So hopefully maybe sub threes. The last two that I'll have to do are a little trickier to get into. I definitely do have some ambitions for speedier marathons, and I have some numbers maybe in the back of my head, but no hard and set things because with like life throws you different challenges. So I don't want to put hard and set numbers on it. And although I wish going pro would be sick, I think that's I would have had to been doing this a little earlier and a little bit more seriously. So more just for the fun of it.
Well, we are here supporting you through that journey. I have no doubt those 7 majors are going to fall and you're going to be running them quick. And yeah, if you need, community support to get you into one of those races, I know Tokyo is one that, you can use a little bit of momentum behind you to get in sometimes. Yeah, the community is here and cheering you on.
Love it. And moving on to the next piece of Mark's, what for you guys? Maybe let's kick it off with Tyler. What is your why? Why do you train and why do you endure all this pain?
That's a nice question. I always love when people ask that. What is your why? I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just like I just like to see what I could put myself through mentally, physically, pushes you to become again stronger mentally, more so than physically. That people just think it's the physical part, but it really helps you with your mental toughness, and you could kind of prove to yourself that you could do cool things and crazy things that some people might call this crazy, and just like perseverance and pushing to the next goal. There's never really a finish line. It's just the journey is what I like about it, and the community around it. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and for me it's sort of similar to Ty, but really it's my identity. Like to a certain extent, the person I am is an athlete, and yes, right now the aim of that athletic challenge and endeavor in my life is endurance sports, but since a young age, I've been an athlete and I don't foresee that changing. So it's just a part of my DNA, and I absolutely love the process. So for me, the pain and gain, it's just a part of who I am as a person now, and I absolutely enjoy it.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, echo both what both of you said. The other piece, just for me, I think my big reason why was showcased during my 100K challenge is just you go out, set these sometimes silly, dumb goals to reach something for the end of the year or whatever, and then you get people to tag along, whether that's for half of it for 50 kilometers or just 1 kilometer. Just having those people that are there with you, supporting you, joining in on the fun, and just so willing to just like build this community and like friendship among all these people through the pain is awesome and definitely makes the pain worth it. So I think that's it for me.
Totally agree. I think the people is a huge part of it as well. Like we've said this in recent episodes as well, is like that's part of the social and the people that we spend time with. A lot of that revolves around sport, and so it's a way to find connection. All right, moving on to question number two. This is coming in from one of our favorite BIM community members, Kennedy. So let's give it a listen.
Hey guys, this is Kennedy. I love tuning into the podcast every week and listening to your tips and tricks and hearing what you guys are up to and trying out new things for myself. Thanks for having me on here. My question for you guys is, what is one thing that you guys do that gets you up and going on the days that you really don't want to or the days that you don't feel like it? Love to know. Thanks so much.
Great question. Another good one here. I'll start us off with what brings me through those tough days that you really don't wanna. I got lots of those, let me tell you. I just love the process. Like you mentioned in the past question, Brian, it's just the process of going out there. You know, when you're going out there, you're going. You have a main goal in mind. You're trying to get better at something. Most of the times, you know, you have a race in mind or something to work towards. So just again, enjoying the process, challenging myself, and trying to reach that next goal. Another thing too is putting yourself through those tough workouts or those tough days really makes those tough days in your personal life also a lot easier. It's just you go through, you know, the motions of life and motion of endurance sport, and it just gets everything, with going through those tough days during your sport is just makes everything else easier.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kennedy, for the question. I think there's probably three main prongs to what motivates me through the tough days. Number one is waking up and just enjoying a nice coffee. That boost of energy will often change my mood, start getting me out the door. It's like a nice little warm hug, especially in these winter months. So number one is a little bit of caffeine pick me up in the morning. The second thing is the social pressure of having some of the apps and the community that we have really helps motivate me because I know other people are doing it. Maybe I'm going out for a run with somebody or joining somebody on a ride. And even when I'm in a tough workout, knowing that those numbers are going to be published somewhere makes me push through the pain. And then lastly, and I think this might motivate me the most, is on those really harsh days when the conditions suck and it feels like a slog. at the back of my mind, I know some other people are just staying indoors comfy, and I'm making progress. So that's a nice feeling as well. So I think it's those three pillars for me.
Yeah, the your first pillar, the caffeine, is definitely pillar number one and very very high up there for me. A nice espresso shot and 200 milligrams from Assist Beta Fuel always gets me going and makes a tough day feel a little bit easier. Gives me the zoomies, I'll tell you that. But for me, what motivates me on the tough days is having those big season goals in my calendar, paid for, committed for, of I've told people about them, hopefully have some people that will be coming to watch me, maybe friends that are joining me. So having that accountability really helps me push through some of those hard workouts, knowing that I have that goal that I'm working towards. So I kind of have something of like, oh, I'm doing this to achieve this goal of like a stepping stone towards, I mean, as I said in the first question, I don't really know what I'm stepping towards, but micro goals are good.
Yes, and Kennedy, just to motivate you on your tough workouts this winter, everybody in the BIM community, so that you know what's on Kennedy's schedule. She's doing around the Bay 30K, and also is it Rose City Tri, I believe. So look out at her training block, because those are the goals that she has in mind. So Kennedy, hopefully that's a little bit of added pressure to push you through those tough days.
I heard I in there. I'm in.
That's it. Yeah, I think that's going to be a popular try. So moving on to the next question we have. This comes in from Ian. Let's dive in and hear what he has to say.
Hey there, Boys in Motion. I'm a listener of your podcast. You know, I've been enjoying the content. Keep up the good work. I heard you guys were looking for some questions, so I have one, maybe two for you. So please give it your best shot. I took some of your more fun suggestions to heart. I signed up for a few events which are a little ambitious, but I think I can do it with a lot of hard work and effort. And yeah, I'm so far zero training in for it. So on that note, I was wondering if you guys could give me tips and tricks for developing a training plan, start to finish from scratch. I know you guys have mentioned it and doing like micro blocks, but like, how do you even judge what's too hard or not? And on that note, you know, nutritional value, like what are like things you guys should be looking to eat? I know you guys always say to carb up on the run and stuff, and you know, offer snack suggestions, but for like general meals, do you guys have any resources that you guys like to use? And you know, I really, as I said, take your podcast to heart, you know, and try and increase by 10%. But I got to tell you guys, 10% of zero is unfortunately still zero. So please help me out with a baseline. Thanks.
What a funny guy. I love it.
That should be a quote on a t-shirt.
That is maybe the best quote that Bim has gotten in history. Yeah, so good. Yeah, I know when we saw that 5K around the Bay sign up, all of the boys at BIM were super excited, and everyone else, we were just super pumped to see that sign up. So we're excited for you to join us at Around the Bay.
There's a
And
corporate
as
meeting
far
about it.
Oh yeah, big corporate meeting.
It
It's
was nice.
yeah, it's some important stuff. But in terms of training plan, and I'll definitely let Tyler touch on this in a little bit since he is our in-house training plan expert. But I know that you, for the BIM 5K, you are following the Couch to 5K program. At the end, there was a little bit of a fall off with some sickness and other things that came up. But knowing that you're also committed to the BIM bike ride, my suggestion for this coming 5K block would be to do something very similar to that Couch to 5K, focusing on that. I know you have that 40-minute goal for the 5K, so kind of working your way up to running just over that 40 minutes. And whether that's run walks as in the program, it's kind of going to vary between the two, but working up in distance. But then also trying to add a little bit of volume on that indoor trainer of yours and getting a little bit of that bike time on the saddle so that you can increase that endurance that will help you with both the run and prepare you for the big BIM bike ride. So that would be my main suggestion. What about you, Tyler? You got any hot training plan tips?
Those are some nice suggestions. I will have to say I did give some nice bootleg training plans to a few actually. Total couch, zero effort. I mean, zero experience running, and it worked. No injuries. I think actually, they both completed a half marathon later that summer. So I guess it did end up working. But I got them, I guess, a couch to 10K, and it was just those key sessions and just really slowly ramping up, nothing too crazy. Don't do the couch to marathon like some other people do right off the bat. A lot of walk runs. You do minute based, couple minutes running, couple minutes walking, and then you start alternating your ratios to a bit more running instead of walking, and so on and so forth. But I don't know, maybe we could hook you up with a nice plan, a bootleg plan, not patented, but it could work out. I think we could get you sorted out for a nice plan. Any tips on endurance diet, Brian? I know you've been suiting me up with some nice tips and tricks on what you eat before, during, and after workouts.
Yeah, definitely some advice for nutrition for endurance training, but I think generally, and because we don't have so much time to dive into this topic, maybe this will be an upcoming episode, something we can dive into in more detail. But I would say there's a few key pieces to just general nutrition. One is don't try fad diets. They generally don't work. You don't want something that's like too strict and rigid where you're going to do it for a few days and then burn out and then just overconsume and snap that rubber band. It just never is a positive experience and usually not good for your body. The second is try to eat whole foods. So stay away from ultra processed foods. When you go shopping at the grocery store, try to stay out of the center aisles for most of your shopping. Up the veg and fruit intake and eat healthy, lean proteins. And then also, it's really those refined sugars. Try to avoid them as much as you can. But when you're in the endurance activity, that's where you get your sugars. So it's just about kind of changing your lifestyle and not being too strict and just shifting to things that your ancestors could eat 100 years ago, and you'll be well on your way to a better nutrition.
And just while you wait for that episode on nutrition, because we'll definitely dive more into it, a good book recommendation that I really like is by Matt Fitzgerald. He has a lot of good endurance books, but he has one called The Endurance Diet that is more kind of just building out those core principles, giving kind of specific examples in each of the specific macros and good, healthy kind of meal options. And then he also has a book called Racing Weight, which is kind of a little bit more geared towards performance, but both of those books are great and worth a read and a skim through just to get some general ideas if you're feeling a little stuck.
Wonderful. Okay, let's hop over to our next question. This one comes from somebody important in my life. It's Pete, my dad, who has come to us with a question. And I don't think any of us have even heard this before, so I'm excited.
Question for you guys regarding the upcoming Around the Bay race. I'm wondering what the best way to train for the hills would be. And I'm also wondering if I'm running the race and get a cramp while running these hills, what would be the best way to deal with it?
That is a wonderful question. I think it's something at the back of most people's minds. Training for Around the Bay, everybody knows that last third of the race, kind of right after your half marathon, boom, you get hit with a little bit of elevation, some rollers coming through, like from Burlington towards the finish line, is a lot of rolling hills through those neighborhoods. So I think the key is you actually want to practice running hills on tired legs, whether those are intervals or you're just adding elevation to your runs, especially those longer runs. You sort of want to match some of the course to your training. So I have in my plan actually, elevation is something that I'm tracking every week, and I'm trying to kind of continuously increase that incrementally as I gear towards the race.
Yeah, a few little tricks that I like for including elevation is one, include elevation easy even on your easy days. You're still going to do those hills at effort, but doing them easy and just getting them in some nice rolling hills for your shorter runs is always nice. You don't always need to be blasting up hills during hill sprints to get them in, so that's good too. And as Brian mentioned, doing hills or hill repeats or like more elevation focused workouts on tired legs, especially with the location of the hills in the around the bay course, is key. You want to make sure that you've put a little bit of distance. So put maybe that elevation at the end of your week when your legs are feeling a little bit tired, just like they will be during around the bay.
I want to give a nice little piece to the cramping part because I have tried to avoid cramping in most of my long races. And I think a major piece to that is just having a good hydration and sodium plan before and during the race. So just make sure with proper sodium loading and hydrating, depends on the weather. I know we're going to probably get pretty chilly weather, so maybe the sun won't be too much of an issue, but still make sure your muscles and your legs are fully loaded with salt, and you should be okay with the cramping, and just manage your effort at the same time, right? If you're going too fast and you're feeling a cramp coming on, just slow it down. We're not breaking records here. We're trying to finish and have a good time. So just enjoy it and get that sodium in.
Ooh, food's going to be tasty in the Hackman household. Okay, moving on to our next listener question. This comes from Jacob. Jacob is a Toronto man. He's also running around the Bay and diving into some of the tries similar to Kennedy. So let's hear what he has to say.
Hey boys, it's Jacob here, longtime listener, first time caller, and I just had a few questions about running shoes. I've gotten into running recently, and I was just wondering how you pick the right running shoe for you, if you should be alternating your shoes between runs, if you should be breaking in your shoes before a big run, and how long your running shoes normally last you. Thanks, guys.
That's nice. These are some hard hitting questions. I like it. I'll try to riddle off a couple of them. You guys could finish me off here. But I like, firstly, you need more than one pair of shoes. We've talked a little bit about it on other episodes. There's some shoes for different activities, we could call it. You got your race shoe, you got your tempo shoe, some trail shoes, and some those cushiony shoes for those long runs, those random lunch runs that you might have here and there. Well, I think having the correct shoe for the activity is number one that you should be looking at. Also, keeping those foams fresh. I know we've again briefly discussed that, but I think that's another big thing. If you're running 4 or 5 times a week, you don't want to be running in the same pair over and over again. You run in a fast shoe, let's say on a Monday, and you let that breathe until later in the week or the week after, and you go to some cushiony shoe or some trail shoe, and you change up the terrain there. But just a couple tips on the shoe selection.
Love it. Yeah, some good tips. My big tip for shoe rotation is just, especially Jacob, as you're getting into the big boy miles that, well, you were getting into and are about to get right back into. Um, Never wear the same shoe on the next. Always rotate your shoes. So at the bare minimum, I would say have at least two pair of trainers that you are super comfortable. Ideally, probably three, because one will be maybe a bit more speed focused. And for how long they last, this is definitely going to depend on the type of shoe that you have. But I would say generally about in that 500 to 800 kilometers is generally where most shoes will land. Some are crazy durable, those like a little bit heavier daily trainers that you can maybe push a little bit further, but you use your judgment. If you're starting to see like holes and stuff in the upper, or they're just starting to feel super, super flat, it's probably time to retire them. But having a nice shoe rotation will definitely help you extend the life a bit on those shoes.
Yeah, love it. And yeah, I think having a good rotation of shoes is key. I do want to give a shout out to that beautiful bike in his background. And I'm peeping quite the bike computer on that bad boy too. Really nice. So if you're listening, Jacob, I'd love to know what bike computer you currently have slapped on that bad boy. It looks nice. Another thing that he asked was sort of around breaking in a new pair of shoes. I think I just in the last week or so went out with a new pair of shoes. And let me tell you, I was so thankful that it wasn't a huge long run. So my tip is to actually like once you find some shoes that are right for you, or even some experimental shoes that you're just trying, is to go on a few shorter runs to break them in. I find that the first run in a pair of shoes is sometimes uncomfortable, whether you're kind of just breaking in that shoe, your foot's adjusting to some new stimulus because every shoe hits a little bit different. So my recommendation is to kind of, similar to how you want to increase your mileage steadily on your overall training plan, do something similar on your shoes. So maybe you start out with a few single digit runs in a pair of shoes, and then you can start to hit longer and longer distances once you start feeling comfortable in those shoes. That would be my recommendation. Another little tip for those in the kind of GTA Golden Horseshoe is, if you're looking for a pair of shoes, Kintech does some kind of assessments, and you can even go to some physios who can help do some gait analysis, podiatrists that can help do some gait analysis, and they might help you kind of point you in the right direction for what kind of shoes you might need. Anything else to add, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think that covers it pretty well. But once you do find that right shoe and it fits like a glove, when you switch to a new one, sometimes you can just blast right off. No break-in needed. So once you find a good one, it becomes a little easier.
Yeah, that's true. But I do like having a good rotation, because even the perfect shoe you need other shoes in the rotation, because endurance, an endurance sport like running is, you're putting in so many repetitive motions that switching up shoes and that little bit of different stimulus on your legs, even just those micro adjustments that your feet need to do from shoe to shoe, is super important in injury prevention and allowing you to kind of go for the long run. So, moving on to our next question. This one comes from Adam, BIM biker, and now also a runner. He is doing around the bay, so very excited to see him embarking in the running journey. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hi boys, my question for you is, why do I keep getting dropped on my roof and is my trainer broken?
Absolutely love it. First of all, Adam, that is a beautiful Bianchi that you're riding. Just absolutely amazing. It is kind of confusing with that beautiful of a bike that you are getting dropped on my whoosh, because I thought biking was a pay to win sport. I guess that might not translate to the winter season where the weight of your bike doesn't matter quite as much. But I'll give you a couple my whoosh tips that I think might help you. First of all, whatever your weight is, subtract 15 kilograms from it and input that on my whoosh. That will help you a lot going up hills, and your watts per kilogram will get a lot better. So that would probably be my number one tip.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I actually
that's
might
definitely
do
my
that.
first tip.
I might do that.
Now that I've given away all of my secrets, what do you guys think?
So I think that learning the aerodynamic peloton kind of games that happen in my whoosh is one thing that took me a few weeks or even months to really nail down. Trying to stay at a consistent power where you're not like 100 or 0 trying to stay in the draft is really key to being successful in those races, because it allows you to recover in the peloton, not always be taking the front or dropping way back. You just want to stay kind of consistently third, fourth, fifth wheel in that peloton if possible. So I would say part of it is just learning how to be consistent in the peloton. And that will allow you to have a little bit more energy when the hills come, because that's the fact about biking is it's really tough to get away from a peloton, and most people won't attack when you're just rolling on flats or descents. When there's a larger group, people are always going to attack where it's most efficient for them to do so, and 99% of the time that's up hills. So be ready for that. Don't let people surprise you, because those racing dynamics kind of hold true no matter what race you're in. What do you think, Ty?
Very true. I got a nice little glitch I try to do at the beginning, because at the end of the day, it is a virtual race, so you got to take advantage of the glitches you can find. I like just zooming right off the top of the hour. As soon as you hit the start line, you just ramp up for a few seconds to, that crazy wattage. You get to the top, you get the boys jumping, and you just roll that as long as you can. You try not to die. It goes good with your other tactics of trying to stay alive in real life as well. Like, I think at the end of the day, we're just trying to hang on for dear life, and it happens the same in my whoosh. Another thing too that I like looking at, I think it's on the bottom left, is actually, I don't know if you guys do, but I just started doing that. Started looking at my speed versus the gradient. So like just like in real life, and during actual races, I try to gain speed attacking the downhills. So that means you get more speed coming up into the rolling uphill again. So you kind of beat a little bit of that elevation off the start of the next hill. Even in virtual, I think it kind of works with the speed of your character, and you could just push up that hill just a little bit easier if you push on the downhill as well.
Yeah, I agree. Something else about the descents is in my whoosh, you should be able to super tuck if you stop pedaling entirely. If you're at 0 watts for a few seconds down a descent, basically anytime I'm going, I'll actually totally get off the pedals if I know it's a continuous descent, and I'll let my guy super tuck. And generally, that's like a super way to kind of recover during a race after a tough climb. So just sprint over the top of that hill and then super tuck if you've got a nice descent. And then also be mindful, like everybody else around you in a cycling race is suffering. You're not unique in that. Like when I'm battling Marc in those tune up Mondays nowadays, is it's I'm like at death's door pedaling. And I know he is too. So we're just two mans inside caskets trying to battle it out. And I think that's just important to note, is like the other people around you are not feeling fresh. So just try to stick with them.
Very true.
Yeah, I
That's
think
nice.
I think that's the tough part about the virtual is like when you're actually in a peloton, you can kind of get cues and you can see the people you're actually riding with, but you have no idea how they're feeling or what these people's actual fitness levels are. If it's like some crazy biker that, it his heart rate seems like it's low because for him it's not as hard. So yeah, just keep showing up and you'll improve.
Unless you're on chat with the boys and you hear everybody breathing hard in the mic, that's a good telltale sign that everybody's working nice and hard.
Some of my favorite time of the week right there. Speaking of which, I was actually chatting with a friend from university. He said he was recruiting some people who might join us on the Maniac Mondays. So it would be fun to have an even bigger call.
I like that.
Yeah. And lastly, you did ask if your trainer was broken. We're going to do a diagnostic test on that bad boy, because if that's really the case, then yeah, maybe it's just equipment failure, and we can get that fixed and then have you dropping people instead of always getting dropped. All right, let's move on to the last video that we've received from a listener, which is Mike, and he's got a great question for us. Mike, just so everybody knows, is another BIM man, also doing the 30K around the bay. And we're also looking forward to a great cycling season with him because he's kind of one of the key Niagara cycling boys. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hey guys, Michael here. Love tuning in and listening to the pod. I got a couple questions here. First one being directed at Andrew. You guys always talk about being strict to your training plans. Don't stray from it. Get your miles in. So Andrew, just curious, what training plan are you on that it says run 60 kilometers down Yonge Street? Yeah, when you get a chance, if you want to flip that over to me, I'd love to see it. Second question. What are some common practices you guys use when dealing with some minor injuries? Let's say shin splints or mild muscle strains, for example. I'd love to hear some of your suggestions. Thanks, guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
I'm dead.
Wow, I've been fully exposed. Well, I will say that actually my training plan that said that was one of Tyler's patent pending plans. So if you do want something similar, you should reach out to him because he's really good at get building a training plan for some speedy athletes. So it's all the genius that is up here in that brain of Tyler's.
See, I was curious about this because I thought maybe you just misread uh, a bike with run, and so you just did the miles on the feet instead. Similar to what you were thinking about Jacob's marathon, you thought that was maybe just a bike that was misinputted.
Yeah, that is true. I have those slip ups on the Fit Singer, those rest slash cross training days where I just put 60K bike in my schedule. Sometimes I don't put my glasses on in the morning and I'm like 60K run, let's go. If Dr. Fitzinger tells me to, I will.
So how are the legs feeling from the ultras you've been pursuing?
The legs have been feeling quite good. I think key to that is that I've been doing these at a pace that is quite reasonable. I'm not going for any time goals or trying to get any like 50K, 100K PRs. So I think that is a key piece to this is that I'm pulling back my pace quite a bit as I'm increasing that distance that I want to go. And that's kind of what we talk about a lot is like managing the intensity to volume and making sure that you don't just crank both to 10 at the same time. So I think that's key.
For sure. And you see, like, I think you sent a post around, which was Ryan Keeping. He's doing a 250-kilometer run around the Commons in Halifax, like just a little park. And he is doing the nice runner shuffle through a big storm. And it's true, right? He is one of the most impressive Canadians when it comes to distance right now. And a lot of what he's doing is shuffle, but then he can also attack some longer distances because he's built so much mileage in like the triple digits.
Yeah, I think that's key. It's also, yes, I was in a little bit of a running slumber where it may seem like it came out of nowhere, but I have been building my base for many, many years now. So it's not like I just decided one day I'm going to go from 0 to 60K down Young Street. So once you build that base, sometimes you can do some silly things and not pay any consequences if you do them with a little bit of intentionality and a little bit smart with your pacing.
And a little bit of fun. You can never get past that fun portion of it, and it's fun to do wonky things, and people just think you're a real sane person and you just have a lot of fun doing it. Question 2 was avoiding, those naggles and those small injuries on the lower limbs. Easy one for me is you just take a couple rest days. I love, me and rest days. I love taking those days off when you feel a little bit of a tickle, a little bit of a this, a little bit of a that. You just, stretch it out, you assess the problem. Don't force through those little tickles, I think, unless it's a bigger issue. You really got to make sure you got to get after it. But I think just take a rest day, evaluate yourself, and get tickled.
Yeah, you better watch out. The tickle monster's coming after all the Bim boys, it sounds like, the way you're conjuring him. I think so. I have two little tips for those small injuries. One is kind of yeah, like active recovery, but really I think actually seeking physio support and like you can only do so much in terms of yeah, rest, but outside of rest, actually getting some targeted assistance to strengthen, especially when we start talking about shin splints. Like rest is one piece of the puzzle with shin splints. The other is actually re-strengthening and allowing your body to actually be able to put up with some of the tough pressures that mileage on your feet in running can put on your body. And the second thing, which goes hand in hand in this, is when it's really spiking all of that pain, seek alternatives. When I injured my ankle pre marathon, I ended up doing some pretty big mileage on the bike. And coming off of the bike and back onto the feet running, I actually felt my fitness had increased a ton and my body wasn't having that really, really hard pressure from all the running mileage on the ankle. So that's something else is if you can't run, increase that cycling or that swimming volume. Now, Andrew, I know you've dealt with shin splints in the past. Do you have any like protocols that really worked for you? Any tips specifically?
Yeah, I think I worked with a physio for a few rounds of shin splints just from load. I've gotten them a lot in my peak weeks where the volume and the intensity is cranked both to about 9 and it gets a little crazy. I have a group of exercises that I tend to do. I can share those with you, but it's generally just like before the run and maybe after the run, doing some single leg raises, double leg raises, some band work where you're just really strengthening out your calf. So just being super consistent with taking 5 to 10 minutes pre and post run to one, warm up your calves before running, and then just afterwards do a little bit of strengthening work will really go a long way in terms of just bulletproofing your calves for running. But one thing is, if you are getting shin splints, you really do want to crank the intensity down and the volume. I would say if they're not super bad, you want to keep running through them, but just, give yourself some grace to recover and strengthen so that you can come back stronger.
Absolutely loved it. Okay, so that wraps up the community questions that were sent in over video. Now we have one more question that was submitted over text, so let's get to it. This comes from Mr. Chris Perochi, and he has a question which is, what is the most ridiculous thing you've eaten during a ride or a run?
Tyler, I think you're up because I think I know yours.
Oh, I'll gladly take this one. This has been a patent pending, and I've gotten a few of the boys on this. Shout out to Kyle. This is his go-to. Charlie actually gave me this idea, and I've taken it from him and passed it along. Pierogies. Pierogies on a ride, can't beat it. You got those carbs, those fast-acting carbs. You slurp them up. They're really easy, not messy in a baggie. You could even salt them up so you get your sodium in there. It packs a punch. I think most of them are about 10 grams of carbs per pierogi, so they're really easy to count the carbs. I always find that counting carbs is also, so once you get very easy ways to count carbs, it also de-stresses me. But you you boil them the night before so they're not crispy and they don't hurt going down. You could have them mid-ride, you could have them at the top of a nice climb. I like about halfway through a ride, hitting them up, slurping them down. At that point, they're nice and warm already. You don't have to reheat them or anything. They're nice and warm and they just go down real nice and they're not too heavy. Digest them real nice. How about you guys?
I love the pirogues. I remember seeing you golfing those down on a ride together, and I was very, very jealous. They look delicious. Andrew, over to you. What's your ridiculous food?
I normally keep it pretty simple, but I think the, well, maybe most crackhead when I'm doing it is just big flasks of maple syrup, of just, it's out of context of endurance sport, just gulping down like 150 to 200 milliliters of maple syrup just in one go is a little ridiculous. And I got that from our boy Lionel Sanders. I saw that he did it, so I was like, okay, if he's doing it, I got to do it too. But in general, I try to keep it pretty simple. But I'm also not doing activities that are super long where I can be eating ridiculous foods. I'm not sitting on a saddle all day, so it's a little harder for me.
Not yet.
This is the thing. When I was trying to think of like what's the craziest thing I've eaten running, it's similar to you, Andrew. It's like, yeah, it's a lot of like simple, easy to eat foods. But on the bike, it's a whole different story. And I think mine actually comes just from a few weeks ago. I was hopping on a ride here at the station in the pain cave, and I had a nice big salad and a mega bowl of buttered nudes just because I was rushing to get on the bike and I couldn't even wait to eat. So I just hopped on for a nice zone 2 session and then started eating dinner. And that was pretty crackhead. The only thing that was missing was a nice glass of wine. But outside of that, I would say, yeah, like a nice big bowl of pasta that took me like, yeah, tens of minutes to eat with a nice big salad was kind of really out there. But I do also have a memorable one, which was eaten at the Grist on a ride with Adam and Mark. It was the only time where like I really suffered with my stomach on a ride. I was like total bonk zone because I ate too much and I had the most creamy mac and cheese with like all of this extra sauce on top. It was 2,000 calories of pure cheese and butter, and it did not sit right.
I bet you Chris is going to be real tempted by that cheesy mac and cheese because I know he's a big fan of the cheese. So he'll probably take that one when he gets on my whoosh.
Oh, believe me, it was nice going down, but it almost felt like it was coming up.
Yeah, you could get some freaky meals going on the trainer. I always set up my trainer near a ledge so I could just, it's like a buffet. As long as you don't have to get up and get off the bike, you could just grab whatever you want if it's already ready. So that's nice. I've seen some mega endurance mans hit some frozen pizzas off the bike too. Those are real nice.
That sounds really good. Yeah, I'm always just laughing about the opportunity to maybe cook some KD while on the saddle, just whipping it up live. That'd be nice.
That's a nice idea, actually.
All right, so I think that wraps up our community Q&A. This is the first iteration of the community Q&A, so leave some comments down below or hit us with a message on Instagram. If you have any questions, they'll be included in our next Q&A. We, of course, love getting the videos in from you all. And yeah, if you have any feedback on the format as well, we'd love to hear that. So thank you for spending some of your holiday season with us here on the Boys in Motion podcast. Merry Christmas. We loved reacting to your videos and answering your questions. It's been an absolute blast.
Merry Christmas, folks. Don't forget, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and join our Strava club. We'll be active on there all throughout the holiday season, enjoying the pain cave just as much as everyone else and at any other time of the year. Subscribe to our podcast, Apple Music, Apple Spotify, and Apple Spotify.
Absolutely exquisite job, Tyler. You hit it out of the park. And we did share lots of tips and tricks today, and a lot of them were amazing, super good. But do remember that we are not medical professionals, and all the tips are based on our personal experiences. So consult with a healthcare provider before any making huge changes to your training, such as running 60 kilometers down Yonge Street.
My training plans are patent pending, but I can distribute to a minimal group of people.
Slightly better than a lump of coke for Christmas. Here's all the working out you have to do. Yoink. Okay, well, thank you all for listening once again. Happy holidays. And before we do wrap up, don't forget next week, huge episode coming out. I think it's going to be our favorite one we released so far. It's the 2024 BIM Awards Show. We'll be celebrating the best moments in endurance sports that this community has seen. And like I said, handing out some of those awards to everybody in the community. So take care. It'll drop on December 31st. Don't miss it.